Genesis. At one point, Nintendo's biggest competition, and probably Sega's most well-known system. Though you could make a small argument for the Dreamcast there. This one right here isn't anything particularly special, it's your standard Model 2, and there's not a whole lot to write home about. However, there's not much that needs to be said because this is actually a spare Genesis for me, used for one purpose and one only. The Sega 32X, excuse me. Yes, I got my hands on one of these abominations last September, but I was anticipating it for a while, which was the sole reason why I kept this particular Genesis. Of course, having a 32X would imply I have 32X games for it, and sure enough I do. When it comes to the Sega Genesis, I usually do a combination of the Genesis and the 32X games, as well as the Sega Master System games for two reasons in particular that justify it. The first reason is because I have just two games for the Master System, so it's not enough to really warrant its own video. But the second and more important reason is because a power-based converter exists that allows to play Master System games on the Genesis. Unfortunately, I don't have this, but I do have a Model 1 Master System to play the games. But because the power-based converter exists, I can justify representing the Master System within the Genesis collection. Alongside those two Master System games are 13 games for the Genesis and 3 for the Sega 32X, for a combined total of 18 games. Yes, I am aware of the Sega CD, but that one's in a position to be its own video, which will be done. Beyond that, let's start with the Master System, since it's the earliest of the three. R-Type. I don't think this one needs much introduction. It is the first game in the R-Type series and got ported onto several systems. I know the TurboGrafx 16 has a copy, for example, but I have the Sega Master System version since I own the console to play it. The only real fault with this one is that the barcode area is damaged. You can see some tape and stuff. Yeah, pretty big disappointment. Inside is not as bad, however, as you've got a cartridge that only has some wear on this very edge and a pretty decent manual. A good looking copy for a really enjoyable game on the Master System. Phantasy Star. Definitely the must-have game for the Sega Master System, to the point where I actually bought this game like 8 months before getting the console to play it. Wouldn't be the first time I did that, though. This copy is actually in decent shape exterior-wise. Inside's a bit of a different story. The big problem with the cartridge being the label is kind of falling out on this side, but it is intact on the left side, so I just probably need to glue that or something. And of course I got the manual for a complete set. That was quite nice to have. This game is a bit pricey for the Master System, but it's probably due to just fan demand, as this game is solidly in the $140 range at the time of recording this. I should also mention that I did play this game for the channel, which is probably going to be my only game for the Sega Master System worth doing so. If you're interested in seeing my playthrough of it, there'll be a link to it in the description. Phantasy Star 2. Fittingly, this is my first game into the Sega Genesis collection. I have completed the game, and I've seen people consider it a hard game, but I personally find it to be more tedious than hard. Outside is, well, outside. It's not really hard to screw with these things. Inside, however, the cartridge looks pretty good. No real issues with it whatsoever, but the manual has seen better days. You can see the bending on both corners, as well as some damage on the bottom, probably because of that bottom tab. It's an alright game, but I personally found it to be a bit of a disappointment, considering it did away with some things that made the first game on the Master System actually stand out. Still, didn't stop me from playing and completing it. Phantasy Star 3. This game's rather recent to my collection, having been bought this past August. As a result, I've only put in like 10 to 15 minutes just to make sure the cartridge worked. Outside looks fine, no real damage whatsoever. Opening it up, we've got the cartridge, which looks, oh shoot, focus, thank you. Just as good as Phantasy Star 2, and the manual actually looks better than 2 without the damage to the bottom, but there is the corner issue, which seems to be a trend for the Sega Genesis games. It's a game I will give a shot eventually, but it is a little down the list when it comes to backlog games. Phantasy Star 4. This is a fantastic game that I've completed, but it's unfortunately one of just 2 games on the Genesis that's cartridge only. So a big priority for me is actually getting this game complete because, at the very least, the original Phantasy Star series would all be completed. However, it does have an edge over all other Genesis games. It's got the strategy guide. Here's a look at that strategy guide, which, as you can see from first glance, it is pretty rough. However, this is one of those cases where finding it in any condition is actually an accomplishment. It's not easy to find. As you can see, there is some Folds, spine really isn't that great, and there's some stuff and writing in the pages that tells some stuff that the guide actually doesn't tell, but again, finding this guide in any condition whatsoever is actually quite a marvel. This is my only strategy guide that covers a game on a Sega console, and I am real happy I was able to find it. Contra Hardcore. I've always looked at this game as a combination of Contra 3 and Contra Force. The big reason why is because this game's story takes place after Contra 3, and like Contra Force, you could actually select one of 4 different characters to play as in the game. Alongside that character variety, this game features split paths, so you have a number of ways of playing this game. Because of that variety, I'd give an argument that this is the best game in the Contra series. I should note, however, that there's 2 variants of this game. All Genesis games have N lettering at the top. This one does not. Some Contra Hardcore copies are like this, and just like some games in the later period of the Genesis, this game was also packaged in 2 different ways, with the hard plastic case or cardboard boxes. Sort of Vermilion. I'm not too big on this game. It's an early Sega RPG, but some of the ways this game functions kind of push me off. Still, it's a really excellent looking copy for a game that is a bit cheap. It's only like $30 complete last I remember. Here's the cartridge, which looks pretty good. And the manual actually doesn't have that cornering issue whatsoever. It actually looks really good. I'll try to trudge through this game later on, but it's not that high a priority. I'm not really fond of how some things work on it. Shining in the Darkness. Just like the first Phantasy Star, this is a game I've played for this channel. If you're interested in my playthrough, there'll be a link in the description. Beyond that, I did find this game to be a bit monotonous, largely because there's only 3 locations in the game and 95% of your time is going to be in the labyrinth, so it did get boring a bit quickly. Here is the cartridge, which is in pretty decent shape, and the manual, which doesn't have that corner problem like most Sega Genesis manuals I find have, but the bottom is a bit worn. Despite my perceived monotony of the game, it is a pretty good one, though it is a bit of a shame that there aren't more Shining games like this. The only other one is the Holy Ark on the Saturn. Landstalker. This is a great action RPG for the Sega Genesis, but the way the game plays, largely you're moving only in intermediate directions, northwest, southwest, southeast, and northeast, does take some time to get used to, and there can be some trouble along the way. The cartridge is in decent shape, but the label is a bit dark. Don't really understand why that is, but it is what it is. Manual is pretty much normal, I'd consider the shape to be. But I did consider playing this game for the channel, but considering how the game actually plays, it has me a bit skeptical. If I do play it, I do. Dragon's Fury. This game is a port of a game called Devil's Crush for the TurboGrafx 16. The game is video pinball with a Dungeons & Dragons-esque flair to it. That's really my best way I can explain this game, to be quite honest. Outside looks fine. Inside, you've got the cartridge, which it's a little dark, but still looks pretty good. And the manual is in great shape, minus a little bending on the bottom corner, but it's not as severe as some of the other ones I find. Still, it's a pretty decent video pinball game, and it's one of the big reasons why I kept it. Wolfchild. This is actually a rather good action platformer that doesn't get a whole lot of attention. It also exists on the Super Nintendo and the Sega CD, but I have the Genesis one first because I found it first. Good thing, because this was at a time I was hunting Genesis games, because I didn't have very many. Here's the inside with the cartridge, which looks a little darker, but that label is still fantastically clean. Likewise, the manual's real clean without a whole lot of flaws either. A complete copy of the Genesis version runs around $120 at the time of recording this, and the cartridge is about $25 to $30. Still, it's definitely worth checking out if you're looking for something different on the Genesis. Ghostbusters! Another great platformer that's one of the few early Ghostbusters games that's not complete trash. This outside case has no problems whatsoever, which is awesome. Open this sucker up. There's your cartridge, which looks pretty flat with just the Ghostbusters logo, but the good part is that there's no fading on the black, which is amazing. The manual, on the other hand, is a bit faded. You can see some white spots on the cover, and a little bend on that bottom corner, but otherwise, it still looks pretty good. A complete copy of this game has run around $100 for a couple years and will likely retain that. Still, it's an excellent Ghostbusters game and one of the few really good licensed games for the time period. Thunder Force 3. This is a pretty good shoot-'em-up that's practically Sega's answer to Gradius, although unlike Gradius we would never see the first game. That only got released on Japanese home computers. The second one would get released, however despite being a fairly cheap game, I haven't been able to find it, so that's the big reason why I haven't got it. The game is, of course, an improvement over the first two Thunder Force games, which makes for a pretty good shoot 'em up on the Genesis. This case is in pretty good shape, minus a spot right up there, right above that first screenshot. Don't know what happened there, but that's really the only flaw outside. The cartridge is in perfect shape. There is no scratches or anything on that cartridge, and the manual likewise is in fantastic shape as well. A complete copy of this game was going for over $100 for a while, but seems to have dipped under that over the past couple months. Still, it is a bit pricey for this game, but not as bad as it used to be. Lightning Force Quest for the Dark Star. Whoever came up with this name is a moron, because North America is the only one that calls it that. What's it actually called? Thunder Force 4. Complete embarrassment of a name aside, this game improves over the first three Thunder Force games to become arguably the best shoot 'em up on the Sega Genesis and one of the best games on the system, period. This case is a little worn, you can see some spots here and there. If I open it up, on the other hand, the cartridge is still excellent as ever, no scratches on the label or any fading whatsoever. The manual isn't as good as Thunder Force 3, but there's still no folding or anything really serious. Complete copy of this game, much like Thunder Force 3, has been around the $100 mark for some time, though it is staying around that as of now. Still, it is an excellent shoot 'em up and definitely a recommendation. Mutant League Hockey. Oh great, an EA game. Well, fortunately this game doesn't include any microtransactions or any other bullshit that make EA the scourge of the industry that it is today. Still, it's a fairly rare game for the Genesis, probably because hockey isn't as big in the US as it is up in Canada. There's also Mutant League Football, which definitely sold more and is cheaper. This case is in okay shape. As you can see, the front was faded. You can just kind of see the color being kind of bleached. Go ahead and open it carefully for a reason. There we go. There's the cartridge, which I always thought those ones looked really weird, but there's no scratching or damage to the label, which is great. And the manual, which it can't even fit the actual case, so it is really hard to keep it in good shape, and I've definitely done my best despite it being as small as it is. Still pretty worn though. A complete copy of this game generally runs around $140 as of recording time, so it's definitely much more expensive than football. Still, not a bad game, and it is pretty interesting to see something different. Calibri. My first of 3 Sega 32X games to show, and the only one that's cartridge only. This game feels like an acid trip. Then again, it's from the same people that made Echo the Dolphin, which itself felt like an acid trip. The game is a hummingbird shoot 'em up. And just like that, my brain got set on fire with magnesium. Still, it's not an easy game to find for the 32X, as of recording time, complete copies are around 250, and even the cartridge is regularly over 100. I mainly picked the game up at a time where it wasn't showing up online at all, so I was able to get it before it really started coming into view, and I'm glad I was able to do so, because since getting this copy, I've only found it one other time in the wild. Zaxxon's Mother Base 2000. An okay shooter that's a recent addition to my collection. It was bought last August along with Phantasy Star 3. The box is a little worn right up top here, it's a bit crushed. Beyond that, the rest of the box looks alright, but the big problem with the 32X in keeping condition is that they are all cardboard boxes. There are no hard cases to save you, unlike the Genesis, so it makes condition preservation pretty difficult. Here's a look inside, featuring the instruction manual, which has some very serious folding on the top and bottom, though it was actually worse when I bought it and I crushed it with my strategy guides just to try to flatten it out more, so it looks better than it used to be. There's also the Sega catalog, which was all the promotional stuff you could buy at the time. And you've got the cartridge, which is in great shape. This is a game I'm willing to play a little more, but I'll give it some more time eventually. Knuckles Chaotix. Pretty much the true prize of the 32X, alongside Blackthorn, which is also pretty cool, but real expensive. Plus, I haven't found it, so that's why I don't have it. This box is about as good as you can get, though there is some damage on the bottom as well as the inner sleeve, which is actually replaceable, so that's not that big a deal. But still, a fantastic looking copy outside. Here's a look inside, featuring a really clean instruction manual, as in no fading whatsoever, though there is the bending on the top and bottom, but that's kind of expected. There is a little staple rust on the top staple here, but other than that, no faults at all, and that's amazing. This is the Sega Visions registration card, which I'll just open up right here. Gives you a 6-month subscription to the Sega Visions magazine that was active at the time. And the cartridge, which has only one real fault in a tiny nick on the very top right. Because this is one of the few games in the Sonic series not to get properly re-released, there's a lot of demand for the game. As of recording time, complete copies are usually around $250, and the cartridge is generally half that at minimum. Despite that, I've only been able to play the game for a few minutes, largely to make sure the 32X I had properly worked, since it was only tested with a Genesis cartridge. I will give it some time and hopefully complete it. And that's all I have to say and show for this video. If you like what you saw, feel free to drop a like. If you're interested in seeing how I update the collection, hit that subscribe button. If you're interested in seeing my Sega CD stuff, feel free to check out its video. But other than that, I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.